When 9-year-old Emma told James Brown why she was selling her father's guitar, his world stopped, because suddenly James wasn't a 73-year-old legend standing on Hollywood Boulevard. He was little James Brown from Augusta again, a poor kid who'd been shining shoes and dancing on street corners for pennies to feed his starving family. "Because a long time ago I was you," James told Emma. What happened next, captured on video and watched by 15 million people, showed the world who James Brown really was. The temperature was 102 degrees on Hollywood Boulevard. Right across from the Chinese theater sat a 9-year-old girl named Emma Rose Williams. She wore a pink t-shirt, faded denim shorts, and gray sneakers. Beside her sat an old Yamaha acoustic guitar. In her hands was a cardboard sign, "For sale $100. Emma's father, David Williams, had died in a construction accident 18 months earlier. The insurance company refused to pay. The company went bankrupt. Emma's mother, Linda Williams, was left with 2 children and 0 income. Linda had started working as a waitress at a diner, but the $1,800 she made each month wasn't enough for rent, food, and bills. Eviction notices had started coming. The fridge was getting emptier by the day, and every night Emma heard her mother sitting at the kitchen table, quietly crying over bills she couldn't pay. That's why Emma had packed the guitar in her school backpack that morning without telling her mother, taken the bus, and come to Hollywood Boulevard. The guitar was a gift her father had given her on her 7th birthday. David had taught Emma the basic chords. Together they'd played "You Are My Sunshine." The guitar was the only physical memory Emma had left of her father, but Emma was 9 years old, and a 9-year-old child would do anything to stop her mother from crying. She'd sell the guitar for $100. That could mean a week's worth of groceries, or maybe half the electric bill, or maybe just her mother crying a little less that night. Emma had been sitting there for 3 hours. Hundreds of people had passed by. Some had looked. Some had taken photos. Some had said, "Oh, how cute." But nobody had stopped. Nobody had bought it. Emma's eyes were starting to fill with tears. But she wasn't crying. Her father had taught her to be strong. Strong people didn't cry, right? But the truth was Emma's heart was breaking, not just because she couldn't sell the guitar, but because she had to sell her father's gift in the first place. It was 2:42 p.m. when James Brown walked onto that street. James was 73 years old. He'd left his hotel that afternoon because he was restless. He wore black pants, a simple button-down shirt, and sunglasses. He looked more like someone's uncle than one of the most important musicians in history. James had just walked out of a coffee shop, iced tea in hand, thinking about the old days, Augusta, Georgia, the poverty, the hunger, the barefoot kid shining shoes. Sometimes he thought about how far he'd come from that terrified 10-year-old demanding 5 minutes on a stage. The little girl with the guitar, and that sign. James stopped. At first he was just curious, because every day in Hollywood hundreds of people tried to sell things. But this looked different. This girl looked different. She looked serious. And James, as a musician, looked at that guitar. Not bad. Old but well maintained. The strings were new. Someone had valued this guitar. James approached. When Emma looked up, she saw an older black man with kind eyes behind sunglasses. Emma jumped to her feet excitedly. Maybe finally someone was interested. James spoke in that familiar voice. Not the stage voice, but the real voice, warm and curious. "What's all this, young lady? You selling this guitar?" Emma nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. It's a really good guitar. My dad taught me how to play on it. It's only $100. James looked at the guitar more closely. He bent down, ran his fingers over the strings. They were perfectly tuned. Then he looked at Emma. There was something on the girl's face, not desperation, but determination. That look made him think, "Why you selling it, sweetheart? This is a nice guitar. Looks like somebody loved this thing." Emma's eyes filled for a moment, but she quickly composed herself. Her voice trembled slightly, but it was determined. "My mum needs help with bills. My dad, he died last year, and mum works really hard, but it's not enough. So I thought maybe if I sell my guitar, it could help." James Brown's world stopped in that moment. His eyes behind the sunglasses locked onto the girl's face, and suddenly he wasn't on Hollywood Boulevard anymore. He was back in Augusta, Georgia. He was that little boy shining shoes for nickels. He was that kid dancing on street corners for pennies because his family was starving. He was that 10-year-old who'd walked into the Lenox Theater barefoot, desperate, refusing to take no for an answer. This story was his story. James swallowed hard. His voice cracked a bit, but he tried to hide it. "Your dad taught you to play, did he?" Emma nodded. "He loved music. He said music makes everything better, even sad things." James crouched down beside the girl. He lowered his sunglasses so Emma could see his eyes, brown eyes that had seen everything, but were still warm. "Listen to me, baby girl. Your dad was absolutely right. Music does make everything better. And you know what else? Dads who teach their little girls to play guitar. They're the best kind of dads." Emma smiled for the first time that day. A small, shy smile. "Did your dad teach you music?" James laughed. That familiar James Brown laugh. The one that had made millions of people smile over the decades. "No, baby. My daddy died when I was real young. And I grew up so poor we didn't have nothing. But I learned music on my own because it was the only thing that made sense when everything else was falling apart." Emma's eyes widened. "You were poor too." "Poor?" James stood up slowly, his knees not what they used to be. "Baby, I was so poor, I didn't have shoes. I shined shoes on street corners when I was your age. I danced for pennies. I sang for nickels. I did whatever I could to help my family survive." Emma looked at this man differently now. He understood. He really understood. James pulled out his wallet, a worn leather wallet he'd had for years. He took out $100 bills, not just one, 5 of them, $500. Emma's eyes went wide. She was almost scared. "Sir, it's only $100. I can't take $500. James put the money in Emma's small hand and closed her fingers around it. Then he looked at the guitar, but didn't touch it. "That money is not for the guitar, sweetheart. That's for you and your mama, for bills, for food, for whatever you need." Emma was confused. But then you don't want the guitar?" James crouched down again. His hands gently touched Emma's shoulders. His voice was serious, soft, almost fragile. "I want you to keep that guitar, baby girl, because that guitar, it's not just wood and strings. It's your daddy. It's every lesson he taught you. It's every song you'll ever play. And one day, when you're older, you're going to play that guitar, and you're going to remember this exact moment. And you're going to remember that your daddy loved you so much that he taught you music. Because music, sweetheart, music never dies. People do, but music lives forever." Emma was struggling hard to hold back her tears now. This stranger, this kind old man, had just said the most beautiful words anyone had said to her since her father died. And Emma, holding $500 in her hand, suddenly started crying. Her tears broke James's heart. But at the same time, They made him proud. These were tears of strength, tears of survival, tears of relief. James pulled a handkerchief from his pocket. He always carried one, old school style, and handed it to Emma. "Here you go, baby. Have a good cry. You've earned it. You're tougher than most grown people I know, and I know a lot of tough people." Emma wiped her nose, thanking him between sobs. But then she asked something, her voice still trembling. "Why are you being so nice to me? You don't even know me." James took a deep breath. He looked out at Hollywood Boulevard. All these people rushing by, nobody stopping, nobody caring. Then he looked back at Emma. "Because a long time ago, I was you, sweetheart. Different place, different time, but same story. Poor kid trying to help mama. And you know what? Nobody helped us. We did it all on our own. And it was hard, harder than anything. So now when I see a kid like you doing what you're doing, I help, because that's what people should do. We should help each other." A group of tourists was passing by, and someone recognized James. A man yelled, "Oh my God, that's James Brown." Suddenly phones came out. Camera flashes went off. People started running toward them. Emma looked around confused. People were running toward this man. Who was he? James stood up, turned to the crowd, and raised his hand in that familiar gesture. "All right now, all right. You'll calm down. I'm just talking to my friend here." But the crowd was growing. Some wanted photos, some wanted autographs. James smiled patiently, but he turned to Emma first. "Listen, baby girl, I got to go before this turns into a circus. But you keep that guitar, you hear me, and you practice every single day, because your daddy's watching and he wants to hear you play." Emma was still in shock. "Wait, are you famous?" James laughed. "Little bit famous? Yeah? Used to sing and dance and make people feel good. Still do when my knees cooperate. But this ain't about me being famous. This is about you being brave. And you're the bravest little girl I've met in a long time." Security from a nearby store approached, trying to control the growing crowd. James patted Emma's head gently, smiled one last time, and disappeared into the crowd of people wanting his attention. Emma was left standing there with $500 in her hand, her guitar safe beside her, and something she didn't quite understand yet. But something important had happened, something that would change her life. That evening when Emma got home, her mother Linda was sitting at the kitchen table, looking at bills again. When Emma walked in and put the $500 on the table, Linda froze. "Emma Rose Williams, where did this money come from?" Emma told the whole story. Hollywood Boulevard, the guitar, the old man who understood, people recognizing him. Linda was angry at first because Emma had gone there without permission. But then she cried because her daughter, her 9-year-old baby, had been trying to save the family. And a stranger, a legend, had given them $500 for no reason except kindness. Linda hugged Emma tightly. "Your dad would be so proud of you, baby. So, so proud." That night, Emma took out her guitar. She hadn't played it in months. Her fingers ached, but she played "You Are My Sunshine." And as she played, she imagined her father's voice. And she remembered that man's words, "Music never dies." 3 days later, Emma's story exploded online. Someone had recorded that moment on Hollywood Boulevard. The video hit 15 million views in the first week. Comments poured in, and help started coming. A GoFundMe campaign raised $47,000. Linda and Emma were no longer facing eviction. The bills were paid, the fridge was full, And it all started with a legend stopping to give a child his time and his heart. But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks later, a call came from James Brown's management office. The voice on the phone was professional but warm. "Miss Williams, Mr. Brown has been following Emma's story. He'd like to invite you both to his performance next month in Los Angeles, and he has something he'd like to give Emma." Linda excitedly accepted, and one Saturday evening they went to the venue where James was performing. They were brought backstage before the show. James's face lit up when he saw Emma. "There's my little rock star. Did you bring your guitar?" She nodded shyly. James sat down with her in his dressing room. He was already in his performance clothes, sharp suit, perfectly styled. But he took 20 minutes to show Emma something special. He taught her a simple blues progression, the foundation of so much music. "This right here," James said, his fingers guiding hers on the frets. "This is what your daddy would want you to learn. Blues is where it all comes from. All the soul, all the feeling. You master this, you can play anything." An hour before showtime, James's lawyer came in with papers. Linda was scared at first. Was there a problem? But when the lawyer explained, Linda's world changed again. James Brown had created a $50,000 education fund in Emma's name. For her education, for music lessons, for her future. And he hadn't told anyone, hadn't told the press, hadn't shared it on social media. He'd just done it because real kindness is silent. When they left that night, after watching James perform with an energy that seemed impossible for a 73-year-old man, Linda pulled Emma close and whispered, "That kind man who helped you, he just gave you a future, baby. He gave you a chance to be anything you want to be." That fall, Emma started private guitar lessons. A real teacher, real technique. And with each lesson she got better. Music became the center of Emma's life. She played after school. She played before bed. She played when she was sad, when she was happy, when she was confused. 6 months later, Emma's school held a talent show. She was nervous, but Linda encouraged her. "Your dad would want you to play, honey." And so would Mr. Brown. When Emma walked on stage with her father's guitar in hand, the auditorium went silent. She took a breath and started playing "You Are My Sunshine." Her voice trembled at first, but then it grew stronger. And in that auditorium, everyone listened, because this wasn't just a song, this was a story. When the song ended, the auditorium erupted. The applause lasted for minutes. That night, Linda showed Emma something on her phone. Someone had recorded the talent show and posted it online. And the video had reached James Brown's social media team. James himself had commented, "This little sister right here is going to change the world one day. I knew it the moment I met her. Keep playing, Emma. Your daddy's watching, and he's so proud, and so am I." Emma read those words over and over. The Godfather of Soul believed in her. Her father would have been so proud. Years later, when people asked James Brown about that day on Hollywood Boulevard, he'd get quiet for a moment. Then he'd say, "I've performed for presidents and kings, but the most important thing I ever did was stop and talk to a little girl selling her daddy's guitar." Because that's what it's all about. Not the fame, not the money. It's about seeing yourself in someone else's struggle and doing something about it. The video of that moment has been watched over 30 million times now, and every time someone watches it, they see a legend remembering where he came from and making sure one little girl wouldn't have to struggle the way he did. Because that's who James Brown really was. Not just the hardest working man in show business, not just the Godfather of Soul, but a man who never forgot being that barefoot kid on an Augusta Street corner, and a man who spent the rest of his life making sure other kids had chances he never had. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that one act of kindness can change everything, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to remember that there are still good people in this world who remember where they came from and help others climb the same ladder they climbed. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a legend can do is stop, crouch down, and tell a struggling child, "I was you once, and I see you now."